Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Himanshu Guliani, and I'm heading the credit advisory function at IndusInd Bank. I welcome you all to this panel discussion on financing the water opportunities and challenges on this World Water Day. We have 6 panelists from various stakeholders in the industry. To begin with, we have Mr. Madhav Kumar, who is Economic and Financial Advisor to National Mission for Clean Ganga. With over 27 years of experience in urban development PPP projects and transaction advisory, he has been instrumental in development of wastewater treatment through HAM-based methodology in NMCG. Good afternoon, welcome you to the panel, sir. Our second panelist is Mr. Brij Raj from Reserve Bank of India. He is the General Manager, Sustainable Finance Group from Department of Regulation. He is an MBA from Hull International Business School, and he has completed various certifications from international universities. He has been awarded the prestigious Chevening Financial Services Fellowship by Government of UK. We welcome you to the panel, Mr. Raj. Good afternoon. Our third panelist is Mr. KP Maheshwari. He is from the Adani Group. He is a CEO of Adani's roads, railway, metro railway, water and wastewater management businesses. Mr. Maheshwari has over 2 decades of experience in the infrastructure industry across sector in managerial capacities. Prior to joining Adani Group, he was heading SL Highways UPL Limited. He also had a stint at Reliance Infrastructure, where he was a CEO of Metro Business and was instrumental in setting up the first line of Mumbai Metro and also the Delhi Airport Express line. We welcome you to the panel, Mr. Maheshwari. Good afternoon. Our fourth participant is Mr. Mittal, Mr. Rajeev Mittal. He's Managing Director and Group CEO of Viatech Wabag Limited. Through his professional career spanning over 3 decades, he has dedicated himself to the water industry with focus on sustainability. He has been very vocal in promoting advanced technologies for water treatment solutions across municipalities and industry, and he's a pioneer in building water neutral and power neutral plants in both India and abroad. He has been recognized at amongst world's top 20 most transformative leaders in water sector by Global Water Intelligence. Mr. Mittal, good afternoon, and we welcome you to the panel.
Good afternoon.
Then we have Mr. C. Chandrasekhar, who is Managing Director and Promoter of Eco Protection Engineers Limited. He has completed his diploma in pollution control and BTech in chemical engineering from Coimbatore Institute of Technology. He has over 3 decades of experience in the field of water and related works. He has executed various projects in area of water treatment, waste water treatment, and solid waste management. Mr. Chandrasekhar, good afternoon, and we welcome you to the panel.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon to all.
We then have Mr. Apoor Shukla, who's a development finance specialist at USAID. He is currently leading the deployment and management of innovative financing solutions at USAID. He has diverse experience across investment research, impact investing, innovative finance advisory, and development consulting. Apoor holds a master's degree from Delhi School of Economics and bachelor's in economics from the prestigious Riverlink College of Commerce. Apoor, good afternoon and welcome you to the panel. Then we have our very own Rupa Satish. She is an alumnus of IIM Lucknow, and she's a career banker with over 3 decades of experience across international and Indian private sector banks. She's an avid green thinker. Rupa is currently the country head for sustainable banking at IndusInd Bank Limited. This unit is responsible for sustainability-linked initiatives, inter alia, doing business development, product development, structuring, and partnerships, ESG ratings, and reporting. She is also heading the CSR and portfolio management and decision sciences unit at IndusInd Bank. Here we have a short video showcasing the commitment and dedication of IndusInd Bank towards development of this sector.
Do you know what clean water looks like? It looks happy, fresh, hopeful, nurturing, prosperous. Over 60 crore Indians are facing extreme water stress, depriving them of these emotions. At IndusInd Bank, we are trying to solve this problem by doing every little bit that we can. Under our water stewardship program, we have dispensed 8.3 crore litres of safe drinking water, rejuvenated 20 lakes, constructed over 1,000 rooftop rainwater harvesting structures for water-stressed rural households, created over 10,400 crore litres of additional rainwater storage capacity, offered 36,000 water and sanitation loans to rural women, financed the debt of over 300 crore rupees for projects involving sewage treatment plants. This World Water Day, let us pledge to save water. Let us pledge to restore the planet. And let us pledge to create more happy faces.
Hello everybody, good afternoon. Today we take the availability of water for granted. But according to a study done by Niti Aayog, by 2030, the demand for water will be double than the supply of water, implying severe shortage of water across India, with thousands and millions of people facing this scarcity. And this requires a very, very urgent implementation of water projects across all facets, across recycling, conservation, as well as water management. And we are here to discuss this very issue with our esteemed panelists who are experts in this field. So without much ado, I would first start with trying to get an understanding of the policy-related measures in this sector. So Mr. Madhav Kumar, if I can request you to provide us your views on how you see India positioned to take on this challenge of water scarcity. The government's step for the National Ganga Mission has been certainly in the right direction. But from there, what have been our learnings? How do we see application of this to other river basins? And are there any learnings from this which is going to, help us with furthering certain policies in this area? Over to you to, just help us understand these issues better.
Thank you so much. Very good afternoon to all the panelists. It is indeed a pleasure to attend this. My apologies that I'm also traveling and as part of my work. So, there could be some difficulty in connections and, I'm just connecting to the mobile of someone else. Even my mobile range is not there. That's the issue. Sorry for that. Without spending much time on that, water sector is an important area where the government is totally focusing on now. And you will see that a lot of investment coming in that side, not only from the urban infrastructure side, I mean, from the AMRUT scheme or the Swachh Bharat mission, but also government has started the Jal Jeevan mission, which is for ensuring drinking water supply to the entire population. Now, our focus as far as National Mission for Clean Ganga, the organization with which I am working, is mostly focused on the wastewater treatment, because our problem is the pollution abatement, which is entering the river Ganga. And it's very important that we preserve our water bodies, because these are all the sources of our drinking water supply as well. So it also has a lot of aesthetics, cultural, and heritage value associated with it. So we largely focus on wastewater treatment side. Now, I would like to limit my discussion for the time being to that and what kind of approach we have, rather than dwell upon the entire water sector aspect, because as we believe that small baby steps will lead to great learnings in future, and will lead to great change in the water segment as such. So our major problem, as I said earlier, was the untreated wastewater flowing to the river Ganga, which is the 70% of the pollution caused by this untreated wastewater. So Ganga rejuvenation program is not new. If you know that it has been taken up in various segments, in various time periods. It started with Ganga Action Program 1 and 2, 1 in 85 and 2 in somewhere in 1994. But then later on in 2011, it came this National Ganga River Basin Project with the support of World Bank. It was about $1.5 billion size with $1 billion from World Bank. But all these efforts focused mostly on the creation of treatment infrastructure and leaving the operation maintenance to the concerned state governments or the urban local body. As you know, in India, water is a state subject and wastewater is again a municipal subject. So the intervention of the government of India in that sector was limited, and the funding was also limited to some extent in Gap 1 and Gap 2, close to about, I think, about 985 crores over a period of about 20 years. But National Ganga River Basin project with 1.5 billion, that project was a good initiative. But once again, the problem was, who will ensure the performance? You are spending on creation of assets. Over a period of time, assets were left unutilized, and it became defined. And that's what our experience was. And when the Namami Gange program was conceived in 2014, it was announced in the budget of 2014, but then the Namami Gange program cabinet has approved it in 2015. This challenge was brought forth, and one issue came up was, let us fund the O&M side as well. So we came with an idea that the 100% O&M funding will also be provided by Government of India for 15 years. After that, anyway, the ULBs have to take care. But once again, the question remains. I mean, you're funding, but whether they will be in a position to perform. That's where in 2016, Government of India came with an idea of performance-based contracting. I mean, this for the first time in the history of the nation, this concept of PPP. I mean, PPP has been tried in certain places here and there, but not at this large scale. For the first time, we had to be National Mission for Clean Ganga, brought it at a large scale, and we looked at the aspects and tried to see, one of the constraints with the banks when we go for bank funding. One of the constraints was, in the PPP sector was there should be an independent revenue stream. But that is not possible in the sector as such, even water sector. For wastewater treatment, in the water sector also, how far the recovery is happening in terms of cost is really a good question. And it has a lot of political and social connotations. So it's not that easy to convert at this stage. So we thought that let us ensure the performance. I mean, that you deliver the results first, and then slowly bring them to adjust to the result, accept that, you have to pay for the results, or you also find out other alternatives to fund the performance. So this was the idea. So we started looking at options, and we found that this hybrid annuity-based PPP mode was adopted in highways, and it could be a possible option for us to choose. So that's how we started, and we ensured that. But we did not just adopt the model which was there in highways. We made some changes which will attract players to this particular sector. So, but the KPI, the key performance indicators-based payment, was inbuilt in the contractual structure itself. And we brought in this private participation in the development and operation maintenance to give comfort to the lenders, because this is a new lending area where we don't know how far the lenders like that. We had a lot of consultations. We had market consultations with the developers, with bankers, at multiple rounds. We evolved our documents also over a period of time. So we brought in two major comfort factors. One is we covered the entire interest rate risk of the concessionaire. That means right now we are paying at the rate of SBI MCLR plus 3%, which is almost covers the entire interest rate risk of the bank, and also to some extent even the and also we created the payment security mechanism, which we typically call as escrow mechanism, but escrow mechanism in the traditional parlance is a little different. But here it's basically a payment security mechanism wherein we deposit 2 years of annuity and O&M payments in a dedicated account, which is available and can be seen to the concessionaire for security of their payment. And during construction period, we are maintaining 2 milestone payment in that account. And this gave a lot of comfort, but still the involvement of public sector banks in this direction was little limited, because they have already burned their fingers in the other infrastructure segment, in the PPP side. So a little bit of resistance was there, but this has been now eased out. And
so do you see this being applied? So, sir, I wanted to just ask, do you see this being applied to other river basins now? The same model?
Yeah, I'll come to that point. Yeah. So this has given comfort. We also brought in other changes. For example, even in the selection criteria, you see, the sector is the number of developers in the sector is very limited. So we made after our market consultation, we made the inclusion criteria for other EPC players to join in hand and then support the developers. So these kind of comfort we have developed, and now our model has now been endorsed by NITI Aayog as a standard bidding doc model for liquid waste management in this country. And also the same thing has been adopted by many state governments. For example, Telangana has is now taking about 3,200 crore worth of projects under HAM now. This has been applied to this fecal sludge management. This is another area which has been, another area where governments are very keen to adopt. Now, as far as the extension of this model to other rivers, yes. Now, we are also requesting the Urban Development Department in the AMRUT to bring in this performance-based contracting in some form. It may not be in the same form, it could be a customized form, but to bring in as such this performance-based contracting. And also, there is an effort to develop a national level entity or national level authority for other rivers. The funding pattern may not be like what we look at for Namami Gange program. Funding pattern could be different. There could be participatory funding from the state government, but the approach will be the approach of HAM will be promoted through that particular entity. As of now, it is in the drawing board. It may come out soon. So we will see the adoption of the same model for other rivers as well.
That's very heartening to note, sir. It's very heartening to note that that you're looking at a center level institution, which will certainly provide more comfort to banks, I'm sure. Yeah.
But there could be thing is, NMCG is standing as a guarantor for the payment. So there, this concerned state government could stand as a guarantor. We have to see that. Right. And the institution which is going to come inside is also going to be kind of a facilitator, or maybe we have to, if the government allows, probably a kind of a finance or funding raising mechanism, which will be part of that overall schema. These are all in the drawing board, so I do not want to discuss it further because the reasons.
So, sir, in the interest of time, if I could. So, sir, in the interest of time, thank you very much for those insights. Like I said, some of these measures that you are talking about will be very welcome for banks and financiers. But in the interest of time, I would like to, just at this point in time, invite Mr. Brijraj's comment. Given the mention of financing as a critical need for, boosting projects in the water space, how is Reserve Bank of India looking at the sector? And if you can, shed some light on going forward, what can we expect from Reserve Bank of India in this whole area of, sustainable finance, Rich?
Thank you very much, ma'am. I hope I'm properly audible.
Very audible.
Yeah. Okay. So, Ms. Rupa Satish, moderator of this panel discussion and esteemed co-panelists, my greetings to all of you on the occasion of World Water Day 2022. I'd like to thank Ms. Rupa Satish for this opportunity to be a part of this discussion. I look forward not only to keenly listening, but also learning from my esteemed co-panelists. Coming to the question asked by Madam on what is our perspective on this sector. So, globally, if you see over the past few years in particular, focus of the regulators, supervisors across the world, and particularly in leading countries, on climate risk and sustainable finance has now become more and more significant. And so therefore, in line with what's happening globally within India also, over the past few years, the Reserve Bank of India has now been steadily incentivizing bank lending, particularly for sustainable finance. 2007 was a very important year for us, where we issued the first ever circular relating to sustainable finance, and we asked banks to put in place a proper action plan towards sustainable development and keep monitoring the developments in this regard, and also keep reporting what they are doing in this area. Thereafter, from 2012 onwards, Reserve Bank of India has issued very specific guidelines and guidance to banks that they must start focusing on sustainable finance in a greater way. And we also, to incentivize banks, we have included renewable energy projects in our priority sector lending. In 2012, we had first included the bank lending to individuals under priority sector. In 2015, the ambit was expanded to include bank loans for renewable energy up to 15 crore under priority sector lending, and 2020 September, the loan limit was doubled to 30 crores. So as a result of all this, if you see the facts and figures, the bank credit to the renewable energy sector has been growing. The second point here is that if you look at our external, if you look at our ECB norms, external commercial borrowing norms, that has been fairly liberalized. They have been revisited time and again over the past few years. And the liberal ECB norms of Reserve Bank of India have enabled the Indian renewable energy companies and other firms to tap the ECB route from 2015 onwards for raising finance through sustainable debt offerings such as green bonds, sustainable bonds, and so on in the offshore debt market. Last year was a record year in terms of issuance, and $9.4 billion was raised by Indian companies. So this is another initiative of RBI to encourage sustainable sustainability. Now, as regards our very specific perspective on the water sector, to underscore the importance of the water sector and to incentivize banks to lend, in 2015, a new category was included in our guidelines called social infrastructure, and lending for water projects was also brought in. Water projects, sanitation, etc., was included by RBI under priority sector lending. And the as per the current guidelines now, a limit of 5 crore per borrower is there for setting up schools, drinking water facilities, and sanitation facilities. And also for construction, refurbishment of household toilets and water improvement at the household level. For building healthcare facilities, a loan limit of up to 10 crore in Tier 2 to Tier 6 centers have been included under priority sector lending. And further, bank loans to microfinance institutions, which are extended for on lending to individuals and also to members of the self-help groups and joint liability groups, subject to certain criteria, are also included under priority sector lending if the on lending is for water and sanitation projects. So as you can see from the narration so far, the Reserve Bank of India has been taking several steps over the past few years, in particular to scale up lending for the water and sanitation sector in particular. Just 2 or 3 more points and I'll conclude. We are happy to note that banks and microfinance companies have actually stepped forward and have contributed quite significantly to the water and sanitation space. And particularly if you see over the past few years, even a number of microfinance companies have introduced small ticket loans for household water connections and for sanitation construction. It's very, very redeeming. And so not only the number of microfinance companies which have given such loans has been increasing, but also there has been a very strong demand for such loans, and the number of loans have also been increasing, and repayment track record has also been quite good. So 2 segments have emerged. One is called water, sanitation, housing, which is called WASH. Other segment is called water and sanitation, which is called WATSAN. So these 2 segments have really emerged as important segment for banks and lending. I would use this opportunity to particularly encourage banks to design specific products for both these segments and also scale up their lending significantly in these 2 segments by setting targets for lending. And a lot of empirical data is available. A lot of studies have shown that the repayment in this particular loan segments has been excellent because it is a life-enhancing investment and also it contributes to the well-being of a family. The last point here, ma'am, that water, as we are aware, and you also mentioned in your inaugural remarks, initial remarks about the NITI Aayog study. So water is likely to become more and more scarcer as climate change increases, and water-related risks are likely to keep increasing now. So therefore, there is a need for banks and financial institutions and microfinance companies to now come up with, in addition to the existing suite of products, alternative and more innovative financing models in the water segment, which is going to grow significantly in the coming years and decades. Financing the water sector has its challenges, but to my mind, ma'am, the opportunities and benefits for all concerned far significantly outweigh the challenges. Thank you very much.
Very nicely summarized, sir. And it would lead us directly into the question for Mr. Maheshwari then. So, sir, as a large investor in this sector, with, at the policy level reforms coming in, the financing options with Reserve Bank of India, encouraging banks to provide more and more money into the sector, how do you see this whole sector shaping out over the next few years? And as a strong stakeholder in the segment, any strategic thoughts here in terms of opportunities that you would like to pursue?
Thank you, Rupa, for and IndusInd Bank for giving me the opportunity to participate in this panel discussion. And good afternoon to all my fellow panelists. If we talk about the opportunities in the sector, I'll just give you a few numbers. As per the latest estimates, in the next 6 to 8 years till 2030, almost 1.5 trillion US dollars are required in the water sector to meet its requirement. And I'll just focus on 4 areas. Out of this 1.5 trillion US dollars, the lion's share goes to irrigation and water supply. Then we have water distribution. The third would be water and wastewater treatment, and fourth would be desalination. Now, whether it is irrigation, where out of a total potential of almost 182 million hectares, the gross irrigated area is only 93 million hectares today. So there's a huge potential for augmentation of irrigation facilities and also improvement in the existing facilities. The investment required in irrigation and water supply is almost around 6.3 lakh crores in the next 6 to 8 years. If we talk about water distribution, in water distribution, out of 19 crore rural households, only around 48% have piped water supply. Now, the government, as part of its Jal Jeevan mission, is trying to see that by 2024, every household has a tap water supply. The investment required in this is around 2.5 lakh crores in the next 6 to 8 years. If we talk about desalination, India has a coastline of almost around 8,000 kilometers, but the desalination potential is huge. Almost all major cities are situated on the number of cities which are there on the coastline, and the water requirement in these cities can be easily met by setting up desalination projects. The investment required for desalination is around 60,000 crores by 2030. If we talk about the treatment facilities, and this is really shocking, out of the 62,000 MLDs of sewage which is generated, I'll focus on sewage only. I'll not take too much of focus too much on the industrial treatment part of it. Out of 62,000 MLD of sewage generated in the country, on paper, the facilities which are operational to treat it are only about 30%. And my own experience tells me that 50% of these facilities which are on paper operational are actually not operational. And untreated sewage is simply flowing into the water bodies. But even if we take this 30% on paper as operational, 70% of 43,000 MLD of sewage is getting untreated, and this untreated sewage is flowing into the water bodies and the river. As per Niti Aayog's estimate, 70% of water in this country is contaminated. So if we talk, this is the size of investment which is available, and we can add one more segment to it, which is the river linking. This has been discussed by Government of India for the last 15-20 years, and finally it is seeing the light of the day. The Bethwa Riverlink project is going to be, the agreements have been signed, it's going to be tendered out very shortly. Almost 5.5 lakh crores are required to create 30 links to connect 37 rivers across the country.
Mind-boggling numbers, really.
The investment is huge, and the opportunities are huge. And I'm only talking about from now till 2030. The requirement is going to increase beyond that. Now, as Mr. Madhav Kumar mentioned, the water sector being a state subject largely, in the past, investment has flown in facilities have been created, but then the operations and the maintenance part of it has suffered tremendously. The need is to bring in more private sector investment. There's a huge scope for PPP in the water sector, but unfortunately, the progress has been very, very slow. NMCG, as Mr. Madhav Kumar mentioned, has been a shining example of what a well thought out structure can do for the sector.
Right.
But one NMCG is not enough. You need many, many NMCGs if you have to take care of this problem in the entire country. Mr. Madhav Kumar mentioned that they are thinking about a national level regulatory authority
Right.
with participation from states and all. This is very welcome. This will really help the sector. So from a private sector point of view, what is most important when we look at investment in any particular project or a business venture is that there should be, we know investment is required. There's no problem in bringing the investment into the thing. Financing is available. And again, we are very thankful to IndusInd Bank. They've supported us in financing for our Prayagraj project. And the project is now almost 80-85% complete. So financing is not an issue in the water sector with a bankable structure. What is required is a bankable structure. Now, the certainty of our the recovery of our investment is very important. And as Mr. Madhav Kumar explained, they took this into account not only from a investor point of view, but from a lender's point of view also. Lenders should get their money. They must have a bankable concession structure, and investors should also be able to recover the investment. Now, the NMCG model is one part of it, where NMCG is getting funded from central government and also getting funding from multilateral agencies. If you expand this model to the state level, see, people will rely on a entity like NMCG, which is a central government entity. Because the HAM model, what is important is that 40% of the grant comes during the 2 or 3 years of construction period. So there is a visibility of that. But for the next 15 years, even though the concession agreement provides that NMCG will provide the annuity or the concession will provide the annuity, with an agency like NMCG on the other side, you can sort of rely on them. That being a central government entity, they are not going to default. But if it comes to the state, if a state level agency gives us this sort of a structure, irrespective whether the structure is bankable or not, the question will arise that where will this money come from? For 2 years, okay, they'll provide 40% of the construction grant. But what about for the next 15 years?
Right. So because here, government... here, like you rightly mentioned, a centralized institution would provide that impetus required for the sector. As and when that is that really comes up, right?
That is true. That is very true, and we would love to see that sort of a structure emerging.
Right.
But for the entire requirement of the water sector in the country to be handled by a centralized institution, where what is a state subject, we need to see that.
Right.
Even otherwise, even let's for a moment assume that a central agency will be there for a central government or all the state governments combined to come and put 1.5 trillion US dollar in the sector is next to impossible in the next 6 to 8 years.
Right.
So what will be required is that we must create a structure where the revenue during the O&M period, the recovery of the investment is not only relying on the grant or annuity support from central or state government agencies. We must start pricing the usage of water in such a manner that this creates a revenue source which will then help in recovering the investment. This pricing is very important. I know we have been discussing this thing for the last many years. Mr. Madhav Kumar was also very right in saying that this has political and social connotations. These are very well understood, but at least a beginning should be made that all sewage treated water, for example, we are going to treat almost 365 or 350 MLD of water in Prayagraj. And it will be treated to a very, very stringent standard. So this water can very well be utilized by the industries. If not for potable purpose, this water can be utilized by industries. We need a regulatory mechanism See, just as if you look at solid waste management, where the government of India has come up with a mechanism that all compost which is produced, it is binding on the fertilizer companies to combine to sort of 5% of their sales should come from organic fertilizers by way of compost. And the government of India is subsidizing that by way of 1,500 rupees per ton. This was 3 or 4 years back. I don't remember what it is right now. Similarly, a strong policy push from the central government and state government is required that all industries in the vicinity of a sewage treatment plant should be obliged to use treated water. This would be a first step, and industries have the wherewithal because they're otherwise using groundwater, they're getting water from the municipal corporation. They should, or drawing water from the river body, they should be obliged to use this treated water. So like this, beginning can be made, and we can try out these type of structures in urban centers by way of 24/7 water supply, where the recovery of the bills or the bill collection can also be given to the private sector. See, things will be difficult. Water being essential for life, unlike electricity, things will be difficult. But electricity model has proven well. There will be teething problems, but ultimately this has to happen.
I am totally with you. I'm totally with you here. And in fact, it leads me, very, very well articulated actually, KP. And as you rightly said, a new business model has to emerge here. And Rajeev and I were talking about this just the other day. How do you see this emerging? Rajeev, I would like to invite you to come in here. Do you agree with the views mentioned earlier here? And do you see any newer models emerging? And of course, given it is your company, I'd also like your comments on technology and how you think, whether that can be a good agent of change here in trying to speed up or improve the efficiency of what we are doing today with this important resource.
First, thanks, Rupa. I think it's good time to come. KP has given a lot of information, so I think it will be easy for me to continue where he left. And first, my congratulations to all the panelists and all the people who are joined this panel discussion. It's a World Water Day, and the topic is conserving groundwater. So I think there cannot be a better topic where the technology will fit in. How you conserve groundwater if you don't give them an alternate source of water, whether it's household or whether it's industry largely which are exploiting this groundwater or for irrigation. I think you have to give them an alternate source. And this is the alternate source which will come from technology. You cannot only depend on rainwater and God's gift. So the technology plays a role, as KP was saying, that if the sewage is treated, why don't we treat it a little better and recycle and reuse? I've been saying all these years that water is not there for once use and throw. It has to be reused again and again. And that's the model which I think we are promoting, and we have today the largest plant in Chennai. We have recently also got awarded a Ghaziabad plant, which is also on a PPP model. This technology was very prevalent in the industrial sector, but now we see on a municipal sector where you recycle this water and release the domestic water which is being consumed by the industries to the domestic users. So it's win-win for everybody. Exactly. And the biggest advantage is today the wastewater was considered as biggest liability because there is no revenue model. Today, this revenue model has emerged. Chennai is selling at 80 rupees a kiloliter this water. Ghaziabad will sell at 50 rupees a kiloliter. So why we should not have a self-sustaining and not depend on government for subsidizing it? Because we cannot expect government to do everything. It's not feasible, it's not possible. So we have to have models which are self-sustaining. And today in wastewater, not a single product which goes waste. Like KP was saying, the solids which are produced in this are going for manure. The farmers are taking it. The organics are converted to CNG or power, and water is sent for commercial establishments, industries. So nothing is left in a wastewater, everything is reused. And this is your revenue model. Water is too precious and too scarce to be not valued. It is an economic resource. We have to value it with economies, and we should have metering, we should have billing. This all old fashion of political, social, I think if we don't do, we are just killing the growth of economy, because people will shut down their factories, they will not have water, people will migrate. How the society will sustain?
So there will be no other option, you're saying. There will be no other sustainable option.
Absolutely, Rupa, and that is where I see technology will play a huge role. Like KP said, we have a very long coastline in India. Why desalination is not used? We have demonstrated in Chennai where desalination is a viable, reliable and affordable alternative. People were saying it's very expensive. It's a myth. Today in Chennai, if I take a tanker water, it's much more expensive than a piped desal water. So which is more expensive? Which is more reliable? What this tanker fellow is bringing in that tank, I don't know. So my suggestion, if this model has to continue, which Mr. Madhav Kumar said, performance-based contracts, we cannot expect central government to give guarantees for all these 37 rivers which are now come under the purview of this HAM model. So my suggestion is that we should go for schemes which are self-financing, self-sustaining, and we should have a revenue model from the project rather than expecting a subsidy from the central government, because state governments, nobody is going to trust, their monies are not going to flow through. We will not get a financiers who will be willing to finance it unless we make the project self-sustaining.
Right.
This is my view, and my only one request to Mr. Brijraj, because you talked about so much doing it for renewable energy. Why don't we see this for water? What water has done wrong, that never we see water getting into anything. You are giving 5 crores for building toilets, maintaining the facility. Why not you give an equivalent amount what you are giving for renewable resources, as we all agree that the water is much more precious than power. Water is a way of life, it's essential for life. So we must at least get equal amount what you are giving to renewable energy, is my request to you. I want to leave this thought. We have always seen that water got always a stepmotherly treatment, though we all know it is much more important than power. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your suggestion. Thank you. Thank you.
So, it all comes back to financing again and again, so being the key requirement really for growth of the sector. So I wanted to invite comments from Mr. Chandrasekharan, because his company is slightly different from the two companies that we already had. It's a smaller company in a high growth mode. So what has been your experience, sir, in terms of access to finance? Is it equally available for you, or are there severe challenges that you face in this space? I wanted a perspective because many companies would be able to relate to you in this area. You're on mute, sir. We can't hear you.
Now is it okay?
Yes, yes.
So good afternoon, honorable speakers from NMCG and Reserve Bank of India, and Mr. Mageshwari, CEO of the big corporate conglomerate. And Rajeev Mittal sir, he's a role model for us in this field actually. And good afternoon to all of you. My topic today is a key requirement for a growth-focused SME in this space would be access to timely bank finance. So that's a very true statement, because for growing companies are fully relying on banks only, because the other debt instruments like bonds or commercial papers are not possible for us. The only thing is the initial stage we can bring some angel investor or some venture capitalist in this one. However, their terms are to match with our kind of a requirement. So they will sit on our board and crush us. So also these investors, they will bring only capital infusement. But whereas in our EPC business, the major requirement is non-fund based limits only. So bank guarantees right from EMD and retention money release and mobilization guarantee, performance guarantee, all this throughout the span of the contract, we need non-fund limits. And also for procurement activity, we need huge limit of LC limits. So these facilities can be provided only by the banks. So bank has to support and in this aspects. And secondly, so the banks are like acting, like a main pillar of for growing companies like us actually. And even I can say they are acting like a partner for us actually. So, but while banks are not there when processing the limits of enhancement of limit, and they are very stringent because they look into all aspects like healthy top line and bottom line of the company, and as well like good rating, external rating of the company, and consistent growth in the turnover kind of things are viewed by them actually. But maintaining a consistent growth in the EPC segment is a very tough task, because EPC segment its implementation is follow like a bell curve. Like the initial period, the design stage, on those period it will be a slow phase, and again during aggressive execution period it will peak on the curve, and then again during completion period it will be a slow phase actually. So in a particular year, many projects may fall in either peak of the curve or maybe in the falling phase also. So maintaining a sustainable growth is a tough challenge in the EPC segment. So the bank has to understand and support us. And secondly, the other main criteria in this aspect is the collateral coverage required for the banks. Though we have grown to a corporate entity level, like we have crossed 500 crores turnover and maintaining a very good external rating, banks are seeking additional collaterals whenever we go for any enhancement of new limits actually. And even though like the projects like in a HAM projects, like Mr. Madhav Kumar sir told actually, this HAM projects are escrow accounts are there and fund guaranteed is there by NMCG, but even though banks are a bit reluctant to support in this aspect actually, and they seek 40% fund is provided by the government and 60% has to be brought out by the developer, and out of 60%, 15% can be brought by a developer as an equity, but balance 45% funding. For that also banks are seeking additional collaterals. So this is has to be
a challenging scenario. Overall, a very challenging scenario is what you're saying. And despite that, you have done very well with crossing a 500 crore mark. So congratulations to you. But so here I wanted to invite USAID. One of the reasons we have a multilateral agency also in the panel is that what I have learned is that together in partnerships with multilateral agencies, many of the challenges that you say can be overcome. So I would like to, pass the mic on to Ashok.
Thank you.
Apurv. To Apurv, my apologies, Apurv. Yeah, Apurv, who's a development finance specialist from USAID. You can, you heard it all, Apurv. So if you can help ease the lives of, some SMEs, you can throw some light on how a multilateral agency can really come in and, support growth focused SMEs and MSMEs in this space. That would be very insightful.
Thank you so much, Rupa. And, firstly, thanks a lot for inviting me and making me a part of this illustrious panel. And thanks to the other panelists also for their great insights on the water and the sanitation sector at large. I think just to simply answer your question on, the role that multilateral and bilateral agencies like us can play is really, be that bridge between, different key important stakeholders, whether it's government, whether it's other philanthropic donors, whether it's private sector implementers like Mr. Chandrasekharan, and commercial and impact financiers in this space, and that's the role that we're trying to play, and I can jump into that. But before that, as most of you would be aware, USAID is US government's lead international development agency. We've had over 70 years of successful and fruitful development partnership with India, and our approach and strategy has evolved much in line with India's own growth trajectory and its leadership. In water and sanitation specifically, like I said, we partner with and collaborate with Government of India, private sector, and civil society actors to improve water and sanitation outcomes on the ground. With GOI specifically, I think Mr. Madhav also touched upon it. We partner with government on all the flagship programs like Swachh Bharat Mission, National Rural Drinking Water Program, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, Amrut, Jal Jeevan Mission, Smart City Program, and many more. Our work with Government of India specifically, has helped ensure focus on sustainability, which has, been one of the key themes that I've heard today again and again, through improved quality, governance, finance, and important for today's conversation, increased private sector engagement and financing. And that's a good segue to get into private sector engagement, which is, a core pillar of all our development programming. And I think this comes through, some of the points that Mr. Krishna was also making. With and I think some of the other panelists also touched upon with the kind of development challenges that we're looking at, and especially in WASH, public funding, government funding, philanthropic funding, aid funding is not going to be, enough to solve these problems. And private sector financing, private sector engagement needs to play a big role over the next few years to really fill that gap. And that's really the core tenet of us engaging with the private sector. And we do it in, multiple ways. And I'll briefly touch upon each of them. First is, engaging with private sector players to share information, to identify shared value, and help expand their own programs, which align with our development objectives. Secondly, supporting innovations and harnessing innovations like the ones that Mr. Rajeev was talking about, technologies in the water space at all stages, at very early product test stage, at scaling up stage, both through our grants as well as technical assistance. Thirdly, and I think probably most relevant to this conversation, is helping catalyze more private sector investments, most importantly, commercial investments into water and sanitation through a de-risking model. And finally, which is also a constant theme that comes out, is the need for a strengthened or a strong enabling environment, and for that we engage with regulators, policymakers, and do host of activities, including technical assistance and government capacity building. And I don't want to take too much more time, but just want to talk about some of the specific work that we do on financing as an example. And I think that's where the role of donor agencies, multilateral, bilateral agencies becomes very important. And I want to start by kind of reiterating some of the issues we've heard for financiers, both from the private sector implementers who seek financing and the financiers who are trying to get into it. And I'm sure Rupa would probably resonate with a lot of this. And I think a lot of what we are seeing now in the wash sector is quite nascent, at least some of the sub-segments. And generally, I think private capital providers, as we understand it, face challenges such as high perceived risk, incomplete market information, few investable models, in some cases, high dependence on probably state or local government receivables, which can be uncertain, and lack of that enabling ecosystem, to name a few. And I think that's where some of the work that we are now doing with IndusInd Bank, along with our technical assistance programs, becomes very important. One common tool, which is what we do with IndusInd Bank, is the partial credit guarantee agreement coupled with our technical assistance. The idea again is to work with financial institutions to help them wet their feet into a new sector, and in this case, water and sanitation, through both a pari passu 50% risk sharing agreement, but also coupling it with technical assistance or our technical expertise in the sector, both for the borrowers as well as the lender in this case. Currently, we have a portfolio of about $85 million in these risk-sharing agreements in water and sanitation space. And other than IndusInd, we've also partnered with smaller players, focusing on the entire spectrum of ticket sizes that SMEs in WASH might require. And one other than this partial credit guarantee product that we have, we also explore other blended finance, other innovative finance instruments. And I think that's something, going back to what Krishna had also mentioned, there's need for more innovative products that are more tailor-made and suit the need of enterprises in this space. So that's another area that we're growing into. And I think the principles for us when we do this is, one, obviously that this aligns with our broader development goals and is complementary to our water and sanitation programs when we work with financial institutions and implementers. Second is we want to be additional, and that's what multilaterals, bilaterals should play as a role. They should be additional coming into transactions. We don't want to support transactions that would have happened without a risk-sharing support or a blended finance support. We want to support, our support should really be the tipping balance. And lastly, and I think this is something that most panelists spoke about, sustainable private capital mobilization, even through our risk-sharing agreements. Like I said, our hope is to help financial institutions enter a space, build a market, and be able to lend to that segment sustainably. And I think that's where some of the big numbers, huge numbers that Krishna mentioned become very relevant, where I think that $1.5 trillion should not be viewed as a gap, but rather a huge opportunity. And I just want to close with saying, I think two key things as we go forward and try to solve some of these financing challenges also are key themes that I at least take away from this panel. One is, I think, collaboration, where I think regulators, policymakers, policy implementers, private sector companies, private financiers, bilateral, multilateral organizations need to come together to solve the financing challenges, both through direct financing or through even creating better enabling environment. And secondly, I think the need for innovation obviously on the product side, but also innovation on the financing side, to see how, if we can look at more products that are suited to needs of private sector enterprises and are tailor-made for them. And I'll I'll stop there. Thanks so much again, Rupa, for this.
Thank you so much, Apurv. Thank you for that clarity. So partnerships is something which would be, I think, hugely beneficial in the sector, especially for innovators and high growth companies for attracting capital for their projects. So we have a few questions coming in here. So if you have a couple of minutes more, I can quickly share some of these questions. Kindly keep your answers a little bit short because we've already we are close to our time limit here. For NMCG, sir, there is one question which has come on the HAM-based financing model. So the question is how successful has HAM-based been, and are you exploring any other models similar to this?
Yeah, quickly, I'll just answer the question. I have not put on my video because there's some issue here. So my answer to this is it has been really successful. We have around 29 projects which are taken under HAM, which are packaged into 19 packages at the cost of around 10,400 crores approximately. And out of these 19 packages, we have already commissioned 2 packages. And the third package, which is under one city, one operator, Mathura, will be commissioned by next month. Now, in a similar line, Mr. Maheshwari is there. They have this Prayagraj project, which is the biggest one city, one operator project. That also, we hope that it will be commissioned by June. Similarly, Kanpur we are expecting in December. So like this, we have already awarded, we have already signed the concession agreement for more than 6-7 packages, and only as of now, only 2 packages are under tendering. We have received tenders for another 2 packages, big packages. So with this indicates that the success is really good. Of course, there are some of them raised the funding issues. The funding issues have to be resolved from the bank side. Banks should also look at it as a possible, best possible opportunity to invest. There could be some RBI guidelines which may not be supporting that, but those guidelines I feel that were issued before the start of the HAM project. So we have to look into that and then adjust accordingly. This one, and then further. The multilateral aid is available in other forms as well. We are taking IBRD guarantee for against NMCG's payment in 3 of our projects. So over a period of time, you will find that even if there is a state-funded mechanism is there, these guarantee from multilateral agencies will also go a long way in reducing the risk which we normally look forward. So I'll stop here, and please excuse me for signing off because I have next meeting.
Thank you very much for your contribution, sir. Thank you very much for your contribution. So the other question is for actually Rajeev from Vietech Wabag. The question is, what is more profitable, sir? Is it EPC model or owning a business in the water segment?
I think normally owning the business in water sector should be profitable, but the way the structure is evolving in HAM, I think Mr. Madhav Kumar has left, but the way it is evolving and without any pre-qualification barriers, today I doubt whether it will be profitable for anybody.
Right. We said that it has to become a more sustainable business model for it to, attract more and more investors into it.
Absolutely.
So that was another interesting question for Adani Group, sir, is that for the ambition of the group, what would it take to, in the water sector, would you find scale of the kind of scale that the group has been used to? Does this sector provide for that scale of projects?
Not at present across many of the verticals in the sector. It's a very, very valid question because the normal size of the projects in NMCG are also around 500, 600, 700 crores. So these are really not the the scale of projects where we would ideally want to operate in. But we expect that in some of the areas, for example, irrigation projects or desalination projects, the scale will be larger, which will be more to our liking.
Right. And to USAID, Apoor, what is your estimate of the market size and opportunities in India in the water sector? Have you seen a lot of companies approaching multilateral agencies for support?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but you hear all kinds of numbers. I think one of the numbers Mr. Krishna also mentioned is an investment gap or a market of almost $1.5 trillion dollars. We've heard of financing gaps in the water and sanitation sector specifically of anywhere between $350 billion to $500 billion till 2030. So numbers can vary, but rest assured, it's a big market which is currently quite underserved. Secondly, yes, we through our partnerships with financial institutions like yourself, Rupa, and others, we do get approached by various innovators for returnable forms of financing, so bank financing, but we also directly support innovators in the space through grants and technical assistance through various procurement mechanisms that we have. And I'm happy to share it offline with you and connect with some of the participants and share those with them.
Certainly, that would be most welcome. And gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our discussion. Thank you so much for your insights. It has indeed been extremely valuable. We've also got some good sneak peek into what is coming in the policy areas way forward. Thank you for your time and your comments. Look forward to engaging with you more in future. Want to just use this opportunity to announce that on World Water Day, IndusInd is proud to dive deeper into the sector with two specific commitments. We have signed a partnership agreement with USAID and DFC for financing $50 million of $50 million of financing for companies in the wash sector, and we are happy to extend that financing to all companies. Secondly, we have for the smaller segment MOU with water.org, which offers 80,000 loans for water and sanitation purposes to underprivileged women. So happy to support these causes. Do connect with us if you feel that you have an opportunity that we can discuss. Again, thank you very much for all your time, and happy World Water Day to all.
Thank you.
Thank you.